Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Grab your passport because we are heading to South Korea. Hello, friends, and welcome to Advanced Studio Classroom. I am your host, Joe, and for this month's travel article, we are talking about Seoul, the capital of South Korea. And joining me today, I have a studio classroom teacher, a Let's Talk writer, and one of my favorite people to talk about mysteries with, Rebecca. Nice to see you today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm very excited to talk about Korea. Although I've never been to Korea, I will be going in October.
Ah, there we go.
So I'm looking forward to learning some new things about Korea.
I feel like this will be a really good article for you then, since I feel like it basically lays out all of the must-go-to places in South Korea, well, in Seoul.
That's right. So perhaps I will discover some new places that I would like to go to when I do visit Korea this coming October.
Very nice. Get your bucket list going. Now, here's the thing, listeners. We're Advanced Studio Classroom, and I understand I haven't really been to Seoul. Rebecca hasn't been to Seoul. So you might be thinking to yourselves, who else is in this panel that could really give me the information I need about Seoul? Well, just for you, I have two special guests, and they have been to Seoul, and they are going to be a wealth of knowledge for us on the program. The first person I'd like to introduce, she is from our Human Resources Department. She helps keep most of our staff sane and has a lovely singing voice, and that is Tina. Welcome to the program, Tina.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Tina.
Yes, I love to travel, and I've been to Seoul for a few times.
Nice. And some of our listeners, if you've kind of grown up with us, you would actually maybe remember Tina from Let's Talk. I think you were in Let's Talk, one of the characters, once upon a time.
The year 2000.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Well, I was really surprised when you told me that because you have such a young face. I was like, really?
Oh, thank you.
So long ago. All right. And we have one other special guest. And actually, I feel like, Rebecca, maybe you should introduce her.
Oh, I would love to introduce her. This is my sister, Katrina. She is here visiting. Actually, she's interning this summer. Ooh. And so it's really exciting. But Katrina, you've been to Seoul, haven't you?
I have been to a very small part of Seoul, a very important part. I have been to the airport. And if it represents anything of the country, it is wonderful.
Oh.
Well, I've never been to the airport.
Well, I know that Seoul, especially like the Incheon airport, is quite a hub now. There are a lot of people that come in and come out. And I remember I had also been to that airport, and something I found, especially with Korean Air when going to the United States, what will happen is you get to that airport, and generally you'll get there at night, and so you'll need to stay over a day. And so during off-peak seasons, Korean Air will usually give you a hotel to stay at. Have you had this experience, Tina?
No, not.
I find it to be a really nice service, and, at least you can kind of like get there, and especially if you're there for even just like 12 hours, you can get just a quick visa and kind of check things out. Was that your experience, Katrina?
Well, my layover was actually only an hour.
So short.
So short. I was running through the airport. I was scared I was going to miss my flight, but coming through, they're very courteous and whatnot.
Oh, very good. Well, we have a lot of information to cover over the next 2 days about Seoul, and this is just a really great way to kind of get yourself thinking about all the places you might want to check out when you visit Seoul. For me, having kind of like the top 10 must-go, must-see activities is really helpful for when planning my trips, and so I hope this is also helpful for you. And we're going to get started today with our first reading.
Getting to the heart of Seoul. Tips for enjoying South Korea's vibrant capital. In 5 days as a rookie among Seoul's palaces, parks, and marketplaces, here are a few things a first-timer learned in Seoul. Start with a palace. One of the astonishing things about Seoul is that nearly all of it has been built in the last 65 years. South Korea, since 1953, after the Korean War, has gone from scorched earth to one of the world's strongest economies, cranking out Samsung phones and Hyundai cars, along with pop music and TV dramas that entertain millions beyond its boundaries. But the city does have 5 restored palaces, all traceable to the Chosun dynasty that ruled Korea from the 1390s to the 1890s. Start with a tour of the reconstructed Gyeongbokgung Palace, where the first Chosun king presided. There are stately tiled roofs, elaborately painted ceilings, and expansive grounds.
I love how the writer opens, talking about in 5 days as a rookie among Seoul's palaces, etc. What does the writer mean, Rebecca, calling themselves a rookie?
That's a great question. Well, rookie is one of our key words here, vocabulary focus words. And this word just means or refers to a person who is new to an organization or an activity. So basically, they're a beginner.
I find the usage here very interesting because we typically talk about rookies in terms of sports or activities, but not so much like, oh, I'm a rookie in New York City. And so it's a very interesting way of phrasing this. And they list out all the places that we're going to be talking about, like palaces, parks, marketplaces. And I guess these are kind of like the big 3 things to see, although I'm sure department stores would also be kind of on that list, Tina.
They do have a couple of big department stores there. But lots of times when especially young ladies, if they go visit Seoul, they would go to other little Korean stores instead of department stores.
So kind of
it's more fun that way.
get away from the bigger places and check out smaller shops.
That's right.
Well, where we're starting today with our article, we're talking about palaces. And so, Katrina, it's kind of interesting because apparently a lot of this city has been rebuilt.
Yeah, it's really incredible how they have been able to take something that maybe was around and represented the old, but made it so it's still relevant to today, which I think is really cool.
Especially because, as it's noted here, since after 1953, most of Seoul was actually scorched. What is meant by that, Rebecca?
When we talk about the word scorched, I actually think of fire. I think of something being burnt and there not being anything left. And that's actually kind of the idea here.
Right, because, the Korean War, during that period, Seoul was basically occupied by several different countries, and it almost exchanged hands on a weekly basis where you had different forces coming in and bombing South Korea, bombing Seoul, or basically like pretty much destroying it. So it was left in a very bad way. And so to rebuild since then is quite incredible. And apparently, Katrina, it hasn't just rebuilt. It's now one of the world's strongest economies. That's crazy.
That's right. That's full 180.
Oh,
where,
good phrase.
a city that was poor and broken has been developed into, like you said, one of the biggest cities for business and truly amazing.
Right.
And kind of along those lines, our lesson does say that cranking out Samsung phones and cars, Hyundai cars, along with pop music and TV dramas. And I really like that phrase, cranking out.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really good phrase. And it's just a fun way of saying that it produced relatively quickly, phones and cars, along with pop music and TV dramas that entertain millions beyond its boundaries. And of course, when you talk about beyond its boundaries, it's not just in Korea.
Right.
Outside of Korea, people are being entertained by these Korean dramas.
Well, I think, especially Korean dramas are huge right now, Tina.
Oh, yeah. If you turn on the TV, we have at least 5 to 7 Korean dramas daily in Taiwan. Yeah.
And I know for American audiences that K-pop is also becoming really big. I remember watching the 2018 YouTube Rewind, and K-pop was very prominently featured in that. They're like, you know what this video needs? K-pop. And I know BTS has also become quite a cultural phenomenon as well.
Yeah.
Rebecca, Katrina, do you all listen to K-pop?
I actually don't. Sometimes I feel like I should listen to K-pop just because I know, especially here in Taiwan, a lot of the younger generation, a lot of the high schoolers really enjoy K-pop. And if I want to have a conversation with them, then I feel like I need to be a little bit more informed.
Oh. How about you, Katrina?
I will admit, as it has gotten more popular, I have found myself either listening on the radio or I've even been in study groups and we spent a lot of time just looking at K-pop videos.
Fun.
So it's definitely, I've been exposed and have been listening.
Amazing. And so there's all of this going on. Now, we're talking specifically about palaces now, and the interesting thing here is we have these palaces, but it says that they're restored palaces, Rebecca.
And that's another great word. And so when we talk about a restored palace, that's the idea that perhaps the palace was destroyed and now they rebuilt this palace. So now it's pretty much as good as new, but it's not the original material that was used when it was first built.
Absolutely. And it might be that certain parts were sort of damaged and so they were rebuilt. And this happens a lot with historical areas. It's not like, you go to the Great Wall of China, it's like, this is the original wall. Like portions of it are original and some of it's not. And these are all traceable, or you can go back to the Joseon dynasty. Now listen, the reader that we had says that all those words so beautifully, and we're going to use just a bit more of an American accent to say these names. And so the Joseon dynasty was from 1392 to 1897, and we have those kind of more general dates, but a lot of the structures were built in the early periods of that ruling dynasty. And so we're starting with the Gyeongbokgung Palace. And this is where the first Joseon king presided. And we get this really nice description of the area, Katrina.
That's right. There are a lot of beautiful imagery, words that are describing, such as the stately tiled roofs or elaborately painted ceilings, which just gives me this picture of something that was taken time with. It's painted nicely. It's beautiful. It's someone took pride in creating these.
Right. And we talk about like stately, we talk about big, grand, kind of majestic. Something to keep in mind, listeners, this palace is closed on Tuesdays. A lot of these palaces, they have one specific day that they'll be closed. And so it's good to keep in mind if you are only in Seoul, maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, don't show up there on a Tuesday and be like, oh, I'm here to see the palace, because the palace won't be there to see you. Well, we're going to talk about one more palace with our next reading.
Maybe one more palace. If you're keenly interested in design, head for Changdeokgung Palace. Bigger than Gyeongbokgung, many of its buildings date to the 17th century. Its gardens, where the royal family spent idle hours among pavilions, ponds, and foliage, have been singled out by UNESCO for their harmonious design.
So we have one more palace to check out, Rebecca.
That's right. Maybe one more palace. If you're keenly interested in design, head for Cheongdong Palace.
That was a good crack at that. We don't speak Korean, unfortunately.
You know, I do not speak Korean, but that was definitely my attempt at saying this palace. But it sounds like a beautiful place. And I really like that word keenly. And so this is just the idea that if you're even just a little bit interested in design or really interested in design, more like it.
Yeah, you're really excited about that. And apparently, this is actually bigger than the other palace we were talking about, Tina.
This one is, but I haven't been to this one.
Oh.
I went to the other one.
You went to the other one.
I went to the other one, the Jimpogong. Yeah.
Ah.
But this one, well, because I'm not a palace person.
You're not a palace person. Oh, you know, I really like that. You know, like, I'm not a palace person. That's really good. My mom, when I brought her to Taipei, I was like, okay, we're going to check out this place, and we're going to go to the National Palace Museum. And she's like, I'm not a museum person. So, scratch that off the list.
Oh, that's me. I'm not a museum person.
Now, these gardens, we get a bit of a description of the gardens because apparently the royal family spent time there, Katrina.
Yes, it says right on that the royal family did spend idle hours among pavilions and ponds. And I could just imagine how great just being able to spend time looking and seeing. And I'm sure with ponds, there's fish and birds, which is really an awesome experience.
Right, just really beautiful. And Rebecca, what exactly is a pavilion? Like, how would you describe that?
I would describe a pavilion as a large area. A large area. Usually there's grass. It's kind of a flat area. And oftentimes, you know, there's usually trees there of some sort.
Right.
Maybe a pond, maybe.
And I know we also kind of have those pavilions that are sort of like, you know, it's an area that maybe will have a roof.
Oh, right.
We have that kind of pavilion where you can sort of sit and have your seat, and you can have some shade and have a little cool spot to be. And apparently this palace has been singled out. It's been picked by UNESCO for their, what a fun way to describe this, harmonious design.
I love that. Harmonious is a great word. It's like unity. Everything's coming together and everything works, probably the colors and the nature. And that's what a wonderful way to describe it.
Right, it's just beautiful. Now, listeners, this place closed on Mondays. So what you do, you go to the first palace on Monday and you go to the second palace on Tuesday, right, Tina?
A little more tip for Rebecca's travel. If you do the Korean costume, like wear their Korean dresses, you can get into the palace's free admission.
What?
Really?
Oh,
So you can go there for one day for walking and taking photos.
that is such a good tip.
So if you wear the traditional Korean costume outfit, then you can get into all the palaces for free?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, this is nice.
That's good.
And they do have actually translated tours. So if you go online, they'll actually have a schedule for when you can do an English tour or a Chinese tour or a Japanese tour. So they have a lot of really good services. Now, we're shifting away from palaces and we're going to talk about shopping, which I think everyone is interested in our next reading.
Sample the action in Myeongdong. This is one of the city's foremost shopping districts, packed with hotels, restaurants, food stalls, and visitor favorites, such as the Nanta Theater, which offers a wordless, kid-friendly musical comedy about a kitchen crew preparing a wedding feast. A network of narrow alleys between the skyscrapers compresses people, bright lights, and food smells. In the restaurants, you'll find kimchi, bulgogi, and bibimbap. Out among the stalls, you'll glimpse corn, sausage, seafood, fruit, lobster, chocolate, and more. The people watching is top-notch, too. That man in the cat costume? He's advertising one of the 2 cat cafes in the neighborhood. Or you could just shop. Myeongdong includes Shinsegae and Lotte, 2 of the country's biggest luxury department stores.
Oh, sample the action, Rebecca. What a way to phrase that.
Oh, yes. And I like the word sample because I love sampling things, especially if you go to Costco.
Costco's perfect for sampling.
And they have samples. You know, sample can be a verb or a noun, right? So you can sample the samples.
Right. And so this is apparently one of the city's foremost shopping districts. What does it mean by foremost, Katrina?
Well, foremost is one of our vocabulary focus words, and it's most important or best, leading.
So it's like a leading place to go shopping. Tina, I have to ask, do you have experience with this spot?
Oh, yes. I love this. I love Mingdong. Mingdong is a place that we always go stay there and then shop around and eat around. Yeah.
Nice. And here, other than shopping, eating, which I know are our top activities usually with tourism, but we also have the Nanta Theater, and this has a very interesting offering, Rebecca.
Yes, it offers a wordless, kid-friendly musical comedy about a kitchen crew preparing a wedding feast. And I think that this is really interesting that it's wordless.
Yeah.
So I get the idea that there's probably no speaking because it's wordless.
Well, what's handy about that is, typically a kind of comedy would be using words and kind of wordplay, but here you don't have that at all. It's sort of more physical comedy, which is nice because that means you don't need a translator.
That's right. And it's also kid-friendly, which means that you can bring your kids if you have any. And it should be kind of fun for the kids, the whole family.
I could imagine the kitchen crew preparing a wedding feast could go hilariously bad. So that would probably be fun to check out. And then as we move away from that theater, we start getting into narrow alleys, Katrina.
That's right. It seems that in Seoul, what we've talked about is there's a lot of skyscrapers and big buildings, but we're moving into a more unique way of seeing the town, the city. Narrow streets, they're small and more filled with a lot of people, it seems.
And I love the way that it describes it. And again, just, the way that travel writing works, it's kind of, instead of a place being crowded, the alleys compress people, Rebecca.
Ooh, compress is a fun word, and it just means that you press something into a small space. So the idea here is that there's all these alleys, and these alleys are between these skyscrapers. So we have like really tall skyscrapers, and people are compressed.
Right.
So that compresses people, bright lights, and food smells all into these small alleys. So there's a lot going on in a small little area.
Absolutely. And I imagine the food offerings here are quite nice. You get your kimchi, your bulgogi, and your bibimbap. And being vegan, bulgogi is off the menu because that's stir-fried meat as far as I'm aware. But bibimbap, I can usually get some kind of vegan version with like rice and get the veggies going, so that's quite nice. And then there are some other wonderful things you can try out among the stalls too, Katrina.
All of the following items are things I love, such as corn and sausage and seafood, fruit, lobster, chocolate, and I'm getting a little hungry just looking at this. But they're great options. They're sweet and savory.
There's like a little something for everybody.
That's right.
Now, Tina, do you have any food recommendations? Do you have anything that you would recommend our listeners absolutely have to try?
In Mingdong, the seafood are really good. They have different kinds of clams. And the clam hot pot. It was really good with octopus, if you guys like octopus. They're famous for the raw octopus, which
Okay.
I can skip with that.
You can skip with the raw octopus. I see. But at least knowing, clams are a definite must.
Clams is good, yeah.
And the picture that we have on page 15 of the roasted lobster.
Lobster.
I'm vegan, but I could appreciate how a meat eater would look at that and say, like, yes, I want 3. Now, moving away from food, we also have just general people watching. And people watching, you're just kind of watching people, seeing who's passing by. And it's apparently top-notch, Rebecca.
Well, that's what our lesson says, and I will be perfectly honest. I do enjoy people watching. Not in a creepy way, but I enjoy watching people, just enjoy observing them because everybody is so unique, so
Right.
different, especially in different cultures. It's really fun to watch how people do things differently.
I think you can get a little bit more of that daily life experience just by sitting down and sort of seeing what's happening around here. And you get the sense, with Top Notch that it's just excellent. And you get a little taste of it. That man in the cat costume, he's doing an advertisement for a cat cafe, which cat cafes are kind of a fun experience. And I know Korea apparently is really into like cat cafes. And I know for those of us that are allergic to cats, that can be a painful experience. But if you're not allergic to cats, you should definitely go and check that out. And we close off today with another very important activity, more shopping. And this is some of the larger stores, right, Rebecca?
That's right. They are two of the country's biggest luxury department stores. And of course, if you see that word luxury, that gives you the idea that perhaps it's a little bit more fancy. It's a little bit more comfortable. You may find more expensive items at these department stores.
Right. So be ready to drop some dollars. Or I believe their currency is won, right? I think that's the Korean currency. So get your won ready because you'll probably be dropping a lot of them. And Tina, I know you've done a lot of shopping, but have you been to either of these department stores?
I actually like the small shops because it's more Korean style. And then with those two big stores, that department stores that have lots of the brand names things that you can get maybe anywhere else. Yeah.
I know that at least with these particular ones, there's a lot of different things to do in there. But yeah, it is more of like the brand names and it's very westernized. So if you're looking for more of a Western experience, definitely worth checking out. But if you want to get down and local, go for the small shops.
Yes.
Friends, we have a whole other day to learn about Seoul. So be sure to join us tomorrow as we continue our adventure through the heart of Seoul. I'm your host, Joe, and joining me today is
Rebecca?
Tina?
And Katrina.
saying goodbye.
Goodbye.